Allahu Akbar, asyhadu an la ilaha illallah, asyhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, hayya 'alas shalah, hayya 'alal falah, qad qamatis shalah, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah.
La ilaha illallah.
Instinctively, humankind will always do wrong and be forgetful. That was human's fitrah. The causes of all the wrongdoings human done could be unintentionally, or maybe because there was no basic knowledge about what is wrong and what is right. But in every bit of a sin, Allah will give a chance to whom He wants. Because Allah is Al-Ghafur, the ever-forgiving, the all-forgiving. That's the wisdom Rizky Liga always acknowledges. Every time he has a tour down his memory lane, back to the time when he didn't know anything about God. It took 40 years for Rizky Liga to find the light in his dark life. Born as a Muslim did not make Rizky faithful to Islam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah.
He even did not understand what Islam is and how to become a real Muslim.
I am Muslim and yes, I believe in God, but not as much as now because now the community that tells me like really Muslim things, like you really have to like pray. Before I never used to do this, because nobody teach me. I never learned from her,
This Australian man was only getting mundane education, not a single religion guidance he got since his childhood. His parents and his family could not help him to find the answers to his questions about Islam. Until came the time when both of Rizky's parents passed away in 2015. Back then he realized that he didn't know what to do to pray for his late parents.
The first thing that I really found there, I have to learn about Muslim. When I called my mom and my dad and my family here, they said, oh, my mom's like sick and stuff like that, and then my dad's sick too. And my sister was telling me, oh, you have to pray, blah, 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 because you're male. And usually in Indonesia, in Muslim, male, he have to, if your parents gone away, your male's prayer is more effective for the parents when they passed away. So yeah, that's when I start learning, oh, okay, let me find out what's Muslim all about too, more deep, And because I was living by myself there, and so I just, sometimes even nobody knows that I go for Jumat, which is over there in Turkish mosque. That's how I found out.
He visited some of the Muslim communities in Sydney, Australia, to learn more about Islam. Unfortunately, that time, he was busy working as a chef. He did not have much time to learn Islam appropriately.
Yeah, back in the days when I was in Australia, I tried to find out what Muslim is. Usually, because every year I call my mom, my family back in Indonesia, like Ramadan, fasting. They tell me, you have to fast for Ramadan, blah, 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 and Eid, which is Lebaran. You have to go pray at least a few times in a life. That's back in the days. Yeah, from families mostly, if I call to Indonesia. And over there, we have these communities like near my house, we have a Turkey mosque. And sometimes I go there just to find out what's happening. And over there too, I found out there's a lot of Indonesian community Muslim there too. But I'm not really connect with them because different time. Because I work, the hours is just completely different than what you have to do, like praying and stuff. So yeah, I learn from community mostly. I find out myself and family.
Nevertheless, he still feels grateful because Allah blesses him with the faith not everybody's got. He keeps looking for a way to make him follow the straight path. istiqomah.
I'm so happy that I learn Muslim here now. I hope that I can get to heaven. When you're saying, I hope I can get to heaven, because what I learned in Muslim here that you do now is gonna take you out there later. So that's what I believe now. Sometimes I pray, I learn Muslim to get to the next life, a good life, inshallah.
Even though his knowledge about Islam was limited, Rizky still persuaded his close friends and his cousins to learn about Islam together.
To learn Islam, and I still do now until like the people in Australia, I still contact them, especially like my brother, my cousins. They're in Australia, they are Indonesian. They like me, they never learn things like this. Sometimes I talk to them, I say, hey, how are you? And sometimes we always joke around too. That's how I share the information by joking first, you know. Hey, have you prayed today? Hey, have you do this? Have you do this? And you know, it's good for you if you do this, and you might get this. That's because I learned from here. That's when I learned in Indonesia. They said, if you pray, you get this. That's when I start talking to my family back in Australia, saying, hey, you know, if you do this, you might get this, and then we joke around. And sometimes I talk to them in direct. They say, oh, even though we joke around, but there's a limit, and I'm always say to them, hey, now we're serious. You know, when you pray, your mom and your dad might listen, even though you're not in the same place, even though you're not in the same room. But sometimes Allah will listen to you, and Allah will spread the word His way to your family. And I always spread the words to my relative in Australia. They're it's the same, similar like me. We don't pray, we don't do all these things in Australia. Sometimes I tell them.
Learning in childhood is like engraving on stone. Meanwhile, learning in adulthood is like engraving on water. Rizky understands that saying because he needs a long time to learn about Islam. Started from Sharia, Akhlaq, Fiqh, to Aqidah, and still many more. But he never feels embraced to learn Islam until he becomes an old man. He believes Allah will guide his heart and soul. There is no such a thing as late to be a faithful and obedient Muslim. In 2019, Rizky decided to come to Indonesia to learn about Islam. He thought Indonesia is the right place to understand Islam kafah. At the beginning, he only planned to stay in Indonesia for 3 months to find the right person to teach him the root and the basic of Islam. But then Allah Karim, Rizky met the love of his life in Indonesia. Rika Pertiwi Putri. She now helps Rizky to learn more about Islam. Indeed, human can only plan something. The ending was Allah rights to decide.
Jadi pada saat waktu itu Mas Kiki masih di Australia, kami memang belum bertemu waktu itu gitu. Jadi sempat hanya berkomunikasi sampai akhirnya Mas Rizky waktu itu ke Indonesia, ada menyatakan serius, tapi waktu itu pun juga memang pertimbangannya adalah karena aku tahu di luar itu kan pergaulannya pasti juga ini ya lebih ke western gitu. Jadi itu ada hal-hal yang benar-benar aku bicarakan waktu itu. Kan di restoran beliau itu masih ada yang mengandung B2 gitu kan. Jadi waktu itu mungkin aku arahkan coba beliau istiqoroh dan aku juga istiqoroh, karena aku bilang kalau misalnya memang mau serius sama aku dan mau memang lanjut apalagi sampai menikah, aku nggak pernah takut yang sama yang namanya konsep rezeki, karena rezeki itu sudah diatur. Tapi yang pasti kalau kita meninggalkan sesuatu karena Allah, insya Allah pasti Allah akan mengganti dengan yang amat sangat jauh lebih baik dan lebih indah. Dan itu benar-benar pilihan yang aku tekankan ke beliau. Jadi waktu itu aku kasih waktu kalau nggak salah 2 hari gitu ya, 2 hari atau 3 hari gitu. Jadi aku minta beliau sih text time lah ya gitu ya untuk berpikir dulu gitu. Maksudnya karena ini kan mau menikah gitu. Tapi alhamdulillah ya waktu itu hanya kurang lebih sehari, nggak nyampe 2 hari. Beliau memutuskan ya udah Bismillah gitu ya kan. Jadi maksudnya ada solusinya lah gitu.
Di dalam Al-Quranul Karim, pasangan suami istri itu diberikan ibrah, diberikan contoh sebagai pasangan yang sangat ideal.
After they got married, they planned to find the best teacher to teach Rizky more about Islam and be back to Australia to continue Rizky restaurant business. Qadarullah wa ma fa'al. Pandemic hits. That is Allah's will to make Rizky stay in Indonesia and learn Islam.
I'm feeling so lucky to learn to learn Muslim in Indonesia, because number one, I met my wife and all my families here, and I learned a lot more. Life after death, the saying in English means life after death. Yeah, I think it's that's the thing that I found out about Muslim things.
There are so many things Rizky is scared of when he is learning Islam in Indonesia. One of them is Islamic extremism.
I find that in Indonesia there's a lot of people, fanatic people, that they really, I don't know, in my understanding it's different path. The way I learn in Muslim in Indonesia is like I said, I'm a man of whatever happened, it's happened. But when it's people like that, sometimes I speak to my wife like this, like that, and then she goes, oh yeah, you don't, try not to follow them. And like me, I always try to understand what people think about religion. All religion is not just like, you have to do this, you have to. I know there's a lot of religion that always goes in different paths. Even though they call it one thing like Islam, Muslim thing, they will say that they're Muslim, but sometimes the people is always goes the wrong way. And I know I'm one of those people that I can see in my eyes, if it's not right, it's right. If it's not wrong, it's wrong. And I always find there are people like that, and I don't really listen to them. I don't really follow them. I just go on what I believe.
Alhamdulillah, during these 3 months he has been staying in Indonesia, there was no single difficulty he got to study and learn Islam.
Well, to find out about Muslim religion in Indonesia, it's so easy. It's so easy. If you go to the mosque, people will say, hello, and then you start talking to them, and then they say, oh yeah, this and that, and this and that. And sometimes they have this, every time you go to the mosque here, which I like it, they have this kajian sometime after they Salat Maghrib. They have kajian until Isha. That's when I start, oh yeah, and sometimes I stay there, listen just a bit, and then I go home, because my wife like stay home, you don't want to leave her there by herself and stuff. Yeah, it's easy to find that in Indonesia than overseas.
His confusion toward Islamic practice he felt when he did Umrah in 2019. That was the first time he saw so many different moves that people did when they did Salat, depending on where they come from.
The only difference when I found out a lot Muslim when I was become Muslim when I was in Indonesia. Back in Australia when I was start learning, only different effect, because as you know, the communities what surround you is different than here. Over there it's just like if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, or if you whatever, they don't really care. Okay, you believe this. But when I start learning in Indonesia, moving to Indonesia, that's when I start learning, and then it's a lot giving me changes, which is like number one, you have to think about the future, like not when you alive in this world, you know. It's more life after this. That's when I start learning then, and from then on, that's when I start. Oh, okay. I start reading things, listening things, and I start. Oh, okay. The different effect is when I was Umrah 2019. with my wife and my mom. Yeah, that's when we really tough, like we will lose path. Me and my moms and my wife go different way, and then when I go back and we were missing each other, and then when I come back to the hotel, and then that's when like after I pray, please, I hope I met my wife at home in the hotel and my mom in the hotel safe, blah blah blah. And then I went to the hotel restaurant. They give me all this food, and it's all great. It's like even the chef comes sit down with me saying, "Oh yeah, I can give you this food." Oh, it's just like excellent. That's because that's when I start learning. Oh, okay, this is what happened when you pray and then you mean it from your heart.
Living and staying in Indonesia had a great positive impact on Rizky's life. His life used to be dark and gloomy. Now he found light to guide his life. Alhamdulillah, after 4 years of studying Islam, Rizky not only learns more about Islam, but also the Al-Quran and practice the 5 pillars of Islam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
One of the best things about learning Islam, now he understands the meaning of fasting. Fasting is not as simple as not eating and drinking from subuh time until Maghrib time. Ramadan in Indonesia feels so meaningful and special for Rizky because of that. Ramadan in Indonesia is so dense with Islamic nuance. Yet it does not make Rizky Liga feels isolated. Because he thinks Ramadan in Indonesia is well mixed of culture and Islam itself. There are many things he can do to strengthen his iman. During Ramadan, Rizky and his family often invited Ustad to learn Islam together. They also read and recite Al-Quran together.
Amin.
Since Rizky now has a wedding organizer business, he always does breakfasting together with his employees in their orphanage.
The atmosphere is just completely different. Work for me is like a second family from home. That's why I want to treat people it's like my family. Especially at work, it's like nearly half of the day we at work is like, work is like my second family. That's why we always have open fasting together with the karyawan, with the staff, because to feel that we are family, and it's just comforting, to be surround people that you always be with every day, each of the day. It just feels so nice and so good, and we can talk about how the Ramadans are, and we can we can communicate. It's easier there.
Allah indeed changed his life and surrounded him with Islamic brothers and sisters, something that he never felt when he was in Australia.
The hardest things in Australia is timing. Sometimes in summer, it's like 7 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock, the sun's still there. But the best thing sometimes in the fasting in Australia, the time is really short, so it's not like 12 hours fasting, In Indonesia, the atmosphere is completely different than there. Over there, fasting in the winter is a lot easier because you wake up, bang, it's already open fast. In here, you wake up in the morning, you salat subuh, and then you have to do all these things, during the day until they about open fast, about 6 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock, and that's you can feel the atmosphere around you is suffering for Ramadan, and that's the only hardest things about the timing.
Rizky hopes he could keep following his straight path, istiqomah, for the rest of his life.
If I passed away, if I can choose how I want to die, like what, husnul khotimah. I hope my prayer is I want to die when I was in mosque, and or if I can pass away in mosque, I want to pass away next to my wife. I was doing a prayer for my wife and for her futures. Since I live in Australia, since I live in Indonesia, one of my closest my relative is they passed away. It's really hard. Like number one, I don't know what's going on with them when they passed away. Like they vomiting, not really nice. You know, I want to be relaxed. I want to be in mosque praying next to my wife. That we're doing salat together.
That is also what other people close to Rizky hope for him and for themselves.
Dalam hidup ini kan balance ya antara dunia dan akhirat gitu. Masa dunia, anak ibu Kiki dia bekerja keras, dia tahu apa yang mau dilakukan sama dia gitu. Doa mama untuk anak mama Kiki antara dunia dan akhirat itu harus seimbang. Tapi alhamdulillah dia mau untuk itu gitu. Dia banyak belajar tentang agama. Mama lihat itu setiap azan dia cepat-cepat ke masjid. Mama dengar juga dari anak mama Ika. Dia suka juga bangun tengah malam untuk ya tahajud. Harapan mama, doa mama. Dekat dia dengan dunia, dekat juga dia dengan akhirat.
Rizky hopes it is not only him who gets a peaceful life through Islam. He prays for the ones who still refuse Islam to finally find the ways to Islam and a better life. A life full of blessing from Allah Azza wa Jalla.
Now I like to give the opportunity to people similar life like mine. Back in Australia, we don't learn Islam or Muslim a lot. Let's learn together, you know, and it's never too late. It's better to learn late than never. I guess my message to everyone is let's learn together. It's never too late. There's always a hard time to learn. You can always make time.